attitude of the left. Forget the New York Times and the Washington Post and so on. The left was making those arguments. So that was one really, secondly, I was interested that a lot of young people online had simply no idea about the history of these schools and the overthrow of governments and the ceaseless, punctual nature of the way in which the US government, on behalf of its allies in Europe and Japan and so on, overthrows governments. Like the history even of Guatemala or Iran, and more recently, 50th anniversary of the coup in Chile, where I live in Santiago, completely obscured. People have no clue about these things. And I was interested in that. Wow, we've done a really bad job as, people of the left, communicators, intellectuals, whatever. Done a really bad job of reminding generation after generation of some of these things. There's a way in which you can write the same book for every generation, and we must. We must write the same book for every generation. So in that sense, there's nothing original in this book. It's written just for this generation. It's merely a recitation of things pretty well known. So I didn't have sources, not because of Paul or that, but because I didn't want the book to become expensive. That was the only reason. It's 100, we published it in India, 100 pages. It was sold for basically a price of a cup of coffee. And it sold a lot. And it's translated into a lot of languages because it's short. And therefore it's available. And also, I wanted to use this book to make a point. See, people say young people don't read. I completely disagree with that. Because young people are reading Facebook posts or Instagram posts, or they're reading all kinds of things. So why can't the form of the social media engagement enter the book? So each section of this book is really short. And the idea was, if you're on a train, you just read one section and put a bookmark and close it and forget. You don't have to read a whole chapter, which requires a different kind of investment of time. So the book is written in these quite short as possible as I could for these stories, but with a narrative. Okay, let me tell you a story about the CIA. You don't really, just one story and then we'll chit-chat. The US ambassador was killed in Libya. You may remember this. He was killed in Benghazi, in a very strange incident in Benghazi. So people were horrified. US ambassador has been killed. So I thought, wait a minute, a US ambassador was killed before. And it's not discussed at all. And that was an ambassador who was killed in Afghanistan in 1978. His name was Adolf Spike Dubs. He was a Soviet specialist. Adolf Spike Dubs was sent by the US to Afghanistan because the US wanted to understand what was this government after the 1978 revolution, the SOR revolution. What are they? So they sent a Soviet specialist. Dubs sent a number of dispatches back to Washington saying, look, they are not actually puppets of the USSR. And they're also completely going to fall apart by themselves because they're constantly fighting. Indeed, that was happening. There was even a shootout in the presidential palace. Tariqi and others were firing at each other. So he said it's not an issue. Suddenly, one day Dubs is going to the embassy and he's kidnapped by mysterious people, taken to a hotel in Kabul, and he's held in this hotel room. There's an attempt by the government to rescue him and everybody's killed. Dubs is killed, the kidnappers are killed, everybody. The US government later says that the kidnappers were Shiite Maoists. And this Shiite Maoist group had kidnapped him. God knows what reason, there's no reason given. The files are basically all almost empty. And for years I've been trying to find, I wanted to write a book called The Murder of Adolf Dubs and the Start of the War on Terror, something like that. Making the case that after Dubs was killed, Brzezinski sent a lot of money to the Mujahideen, which Dubs kept saying don't do. So I always thought the Yanks killed him, they didn't do it. Anyway, but there was no evidence because the files were all empty. And I was asking around, I went to Belfast, met an agent of British intelligence, met lots of people. One day I got a call. I was in Beirut. in Lebanon. I got a call from this guy. He said, listen, can you meet me next week in Cambridge, Massachusetts at this hotel? And he told me his name and I couldn't believe it. I was like, there's no way this guy is calling me. So I was first a little scared. But then I thought, it's too good. So I went to Massachusetts, went that evening. He called me in the evening. He walked in a big jacket. It was a warm day. I was like, what's he getting under the jacket? He came, sat down, he ordered tea, super distinguished man, drank his tea, didn't take the big jacket off. He talked to me for several hours. Then he said, come back tomorrow. Again, several hours he talked to me. He was the CIA station chief in Paris. Very important man, who before that was the CIA head for the whole of Central Asia. He was based in Tehran. Remember, this is before the revolution in Iran. His station was in Tehran. He was in charge of the whole thing. And this is what he told me. First thing he told me was, I heard that you've been asking about doves. He said, don't ask about doves anymore. It will be bad for your health. Now, let me tell you my whole life story. And for 2 days he told me all